Okay, good morning, everybody. Today we are moving into a new section, which is Chapter 2, Section 4. We are going to continue to talk about solving equations, more specifically multi-step equations. Up until now, all of the equations that you guys have worked on are equations that only had variables on one side of the equation. So in this section, we're going to discuss what to do when there are variables on both sides of the equation and how to go about solving those. So let's get started. The first two examples I'm going to show you are these two. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. You can see the directions actually say solve equations with variables on both sides. And so we have this right here. First thing I like to do is I always like to, when we're solving equations, draw our line down there. And so what you want to do when you get into these multi-step equations that have variables on both sides, you want to look at each side individually and determine whether there's anything that you need to do to simplify. And so kind of a preview of what's coming down the road here is you'll have distributive property to do and things to clean up on each side individually. So we need to look, I'm going to scribble this out just to make it look easy. We need to look and see, can we combine the 2 plus the 5k? And the answer to that is no, we cannot, because those are not like terms. Now, moving to the other side of the equation, we're going to do the same thing. Is there anything on the right-hand side of the equation that we can simplify, combine, get together? And over here, there's a 3k and then a minus 6. And again, we can't combine those because those are not like terms. So once we check each side individually, what you want to then do is decide which variable do I want to move, because you got to get all the variables to one side. There is not a right side. It doesn't matter. You can put both the variables on the left or the right. It's your choice. I tend to like to put the variables on the side to where the bigger number is. Now be careful, because sometimes you have negative numbers, so it's always going to go to the bigger side for me when I do this. So looking here, we have a 5k right here and we have a 3k. I'm going to move the 3k over here. I'm going to move it over. Okay. Now, in order to do that, in order to move things from left to the left or to the right of that wall that's right there, you have to add or subtract it. So I'm going to subtract 3k here. I'm going to subtract 3k here. And what ends up happening is I have 3k minus 3k, which is 0. And on the right-hand side, then, I'm only left with negative 6. This negative 6 right here comes down, the k's go away. Okay. Now on the right, or excuse me, on the left-hand side, we still have our 2. I'm sorry, not a negative 2. We still have positive 2 here. And then 5k minus 3k becomes positive 2k. And then I draw my equals. So now you can see what I did. What I accomplished was moving all the variables to one side of the equation. And what this does for us now is allows us to then begin solving for k. And this is just a two-step equation, which is what you guys have been working on in the last few videos. From there, I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. When I do that, the 2's cancel. I'm left with 2k equals negative 8. And last thing I'm going to do, because it's 2 times k, I'm going to divide this side by 2. I'm going to divide this side by 2. And when I do that, these cancel, and k is equal to negative 4. There's my solution. K is negative 4. All right. So that wasn't so bad. Moving on to example B, same type of problem. We want to draw our line down through the equal sign. Please, I would like to see when you guys are doing your work that you are doing this, drawing your line. And then from there, we're going to look at each side individually first. Is there anything to simplify on the left? And the answer is no. Those are not like terms, so we can't do anything. Then we're going to do the same thing. Is there anything to simplify on the right? And again, the answer is no. They're not like terms. So now we can begin to get the variables all over to one side or the other. Now in this case, you can see we have a 5a and we have a negative 7a. Now I personally always try to move the negatives over to the other side. So that means in this case then, since we have negative 7a, I'm going to add 7a to this side, and I'm going to add 7a to this side. Another thing that I want you to make sure that you're seeing here is that as I'm adding 7a to both sides, I'm making sure that the like terms are lined up, because those are the terms that are going to get added together. So on the right-hand side, negative 7 plus 7a, that turns into 0. And we're just left with the 6. Okay. Now on the left-hand side, we have 5a plus 7a. 5a plus 7a becomes 12a. And then don't forget about the plus 2 that's still there hanging out. So now that we've moved the variables all to one side, you can see that we're left with a two-step equation that we can then begin to solve. And so the first step is to subtract 2 from both sides. The 2 over here cancels. I'm left with 12a equals 4. And then the last step, because 12 is multiplying a, we're going to divide by 12 here. I'm going to divide by 12 here. Those cancel, and you're left with a equals. Now you might say that that's 3, but don't get that mixed up. Remember, the 4 is on top and the 12 is on the bottom. So those two numbers need to be reduced. 4/12. Both of those numbers are divisible by 4. And so when I divide both of those numbers by 4, I end up getting 1/3. And there is our final answer for the second one, 1/3. So 2 more for you. Now, if you remember in the last 2 problems, one of the things that I said that you need to always double check is, are there or is there simplification to do in the problem before you start moving variables around? And when you look at this one, there definitely is. So if I just kind of scribble all this out for a second and we look at the left-hand side, you can see that there's a 7 there outside the parentheses. And that 7 needs to be distributed to the n and the negative 1. It's multiplying both of those. So when I multiply 7 times n, I get 7n. And when I multiply 7 times negative 1, I get negative 7, like that. So we have to always make sure that we're simplifying each side of the equation first. So now that I simplified that side, we can kind of get rid of that for a second. We're going to look at the right-hand side and we're going to say, is there any simplification we need to do over there? And the answer is, yes, there is. That needs to go there, and that needs to go there. So when I multiply that out, negative 2 times 3 becomes negative 6, and then negative 2 times n becomes negative 2n. And so what you can see now is that if you look at the left-hand side, those are not like terms. We can't combine them. If you look at the right-hand side, those are not like terms. We can't combine them. Now we can begin moving variables left and right. You always want to simplify the sides individually first. So since the right-hand side has a negative 2n, I'm going to add 2n right here. I'm going to add 2n here. Now by adding 2n, this is going to cancel those. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. We are still left with negative 6, right? The negative 6 comes down. 7n and 2n becomes 9n, and then minus 7. So let's recap what we did. We distributed over here, and then we distributed this. Once we distributed and we got our new equation, we moved one of the n variables to the other side. And now that we've done that, we're left with a two-step equation that we can then solve by adding 7 to both sides. So we get 9n equals, now negative 6 plus 7 is actually 1. And then the last step to get rid of 9 times n is to divide by 9 on both sides. And when I divide by n on both sides, I get n equals 1/9. And there's the solution. And okay. Now moving to the next one. Actually, the last one for today. I'm going to draw our line again. We're going to look at the left-hand side. There's nothing to do. It's just 133, so we can leave that alone. But when I look at the right-hand side, there's something that we need to distribute. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute this 7 to both things like this. And when I do that, I end up with 21n minus 7 minus 7. So 7 times 3n is 21n. 7 times negative 1 is negative 7. And then this negative 7 here still drops down. So on the left, we still have this 133, like that. Now this one's a little different than the last one because there are not multiple variables that we need to get together. You can see there's only one n right there. But we do have like terms right here. We have this negative 7 and negative 7. So those two are going to get together. So we're going to leave the 133. We're going to leave the 21n. And then this is going to become minus 14 because negative 7 minus 7 is negative 14. And so now what we're left with again is just a two-step equation that we can go ahead and proceed to solve by adding 14 to both sides. And so 133 plus 14 is 147. And then I'm going to divide this side by 21. I'm going to divide that side by 21. These 21s cancel. N equals, and I don't think that 147 is divisible by 21 equally. Oh, yes it is. It's 7. So, oh, I lost my screen. Sorry about that, guys. So that just equals 7. And there's your solution to that one. So, all right, guys, there you go. Hopefully that made sense to you. Remember, as always, if you have any questions, feel free to email me and I will do my best to answer your questions. Have a great day.